If you pay attention to the NFL at all these days, you know there have been a ton of major injuries just in the first 2 weeks. And if you play fantasy football, which I know you do, then you probably got into some bidding wars already on the waiver wire, trying to spend enough to pick up that backup running back, that extra wide receiver, because you just need help on your team. You know what's better? Let's grab those guys who could be valuable on the waiver wire before everyone else is out to get them. Last week, I talked about Jalen Naylor and Jordan Whittington, who are scooped up in a lot of leagues this week. So who will be next week's breakout? And then who can you get now that could help your team? And before you go run out to your waiver wire to see if these players are available, get to the Underdog app and go ahead and set your picks. If you don't have Underdog yet, well, you should sign up right now, because if you are a new customer to Underdog, you can get this week's new customer special. It's a free pick. Pat Mahomes just getting 1 yard. So take the higher on that. Again, if you are new to Underdog, sign up now using code ENDGAME, because that gets you this week's new customer special pick. And you also still get a deposit match of 50% all the way up to $1,000 in bonus cash. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, it's the perfect time to do it. Now we have to start at running back, because with guys like Christian McCaffrey and now Isaiah Pacheco hitting IR, a lot of you are definitely in need. I feel you there. If you did grab Jordan Mason off the waiver wire, you're pretty happy, but I hate to even say this, but you know it's possible. What if something happens to Jordan Mason? That's right, we might be looking at a third string running back in San Francisco. Hey, it could definitely happen. So who is the next man up? It's probably going to be Isaac Guerendo, the rookie. Now, this is not going to be a slam dunk pickup like Mason, because Mason has been there a couple years, knows the system, was great in the preseason. Guerendo, again, a rookie, a late rounder, somebody that really is not that proven. And honestly, even at the college ranks, this is somebody who really just kind of came out of nowhere because of his combine effort. And I know we don't like to pick up on guys just because of the combine, because we've been burned by that plenty of times before. But look, this is a unique situation. If you missed it, Guerendo ran a 4.33 40, and his speed score, based on his size and speed, is, let me see, is that right? 100th percentile. That's right, we got the #1 athleticism score among all running backs in this year's class. And you might say, well, it wasn't a great class for running backs, but still, that's something worth noting. This guy has that speed for his size, and he can just flat out burn. The question is the productivity, because it really wasn't there. Like I mentioned, his first 3 years he was at Wisconsin and barely even saw the field, so he transferred to Louisville, where he did, but 810 yards on the ground. He did score 11 touchdowns and 22 receptions. Decent, but again, this is why he was really under the radar. Might not have even been on an NFL club if not for his outstanding combine performance. But the Niners clearly saw something they liked in him, probably the speed. And here's the thing, if this was on almost any other team, I would say this is just too deep, but it's the 49ers, who of course are without CMC for at least 4 weeks. Again, worst case scenario, that calf/Achilles gets aggravated. I don't want to think it, but you have to be prepared for it. And then Jordan Mason, if he's going to be the workhorse here, he's going to get all sorts of banged up. At some point, he might need somebody to help split carries, or at the very least, you want to have that stash if you're the Jordan Mason owner. So let's take a look at Guerendo. I'm not running out to add him everywhere, but if I'm the CMC/Jordan Mason owner, I'm strongly considering it. Now here's a guy who's coming onto the scene. If you have James Cook, you're feeling great right about now after his week 2 3-touchdown performance. But there's somebody else who kind of made an impact despite not doing very much in the box score, and that's his backup, Ray Davis. Now, I know Ray Davis didn't really do much in terms of production. He did see a few carries. Right now, he's got 12 carries out of 2 games. I liked, though, from the eye test, for what that's worth, I like the way he runs, because he runs hard, going straight forward, no dancing here. He's a guy who wants to gain positive yardage in every play, and he did that. 42 rushing yards on those 12 carries. That's not really a great average. But what's interesting is that he already, in those 12 carries, has 2 that have gone for over 10 yards. I mean, he did get stuffed on a few, but he has also shown a little bit of burst. And he's not really a burner either. This is not like a Guerendo, a guy who's just going to outrun the defense. He's more of a bruiser, actually. Only 5'8", but he's stocky 211, and he's running in a pretty good offense there. Buffalo, decent offensive line. Could get some opportunities even with Cook healthy, and of course we're talking high-end handcuff here. This is a player who is pretty much pro ready. He was not only coming out of the SEC, played at Kentucky, where he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and I like that he also posted 29 receptions in back-to-back years, showing he was a factor in the passing game, and he scored 20 touchdowns last season. Again, against some pretty tough competition. And then talk about readiness, it's a player who is now 24 years old, entering the league as a rookie. I mean, Davis could be plug and play, but he's running behind James Cook, and he will for a little while. I mean, possibly all season if Cook stays upright. But again, this is somebody you've got to take a hard look at here if you're looking for some upside at running back. One player who remains injured for who knows how long. You know how I feel about T. Higgins, and I'm sure you do too at this point. So what do we see in week 2? Finally, they give a shot to Jermaine Burton. And we should have known, because coach speak this year has been just as reliable as player health. It feels like coaches are just straight up lying to us over and over again. We had heard throughout the preseason, well, first of all, we saw Jermaine Burton flash huge upside potential, a lot of big plays, that speed, that big play potential that he flashed in the SEC as well in college. But we also heard that the readiness wasn't there, maturity, some rumor, which was never confirmed really, about like sleeping through meetings. And basically the beat writers are now telling us that it's going to be like a redshirt season for him. We're not even going to see him on the field. So of course, week 2, here he is, and he makes a 47-yard catch down the field, showing exactly what he had shown in the preseason. Now I get it. If Higgins does suit up this week or next week, Burton's not getting a whole lot of run. I doubt it. And Andrei Josevich, although he hasn't put up numbers, he's clearly the 3 there. He had a very strong camp as well. He's got a year more of experience, all that. So Burton, a very risky upside kind of flex in deep leagues at most. But I will tell you, number 1, I'm very skeptical of Higgins, as you know this. Number 2, I would say that this is the type of player who's got that weekly upside if you need a flex, if you are in a heavy bye week, if you're just, decimated by injuries like a lot of teams are. He has that potential to pay off with just one play like he does in this offense. And though he's probably not going to be rostered outside of dynasty leagues or keeper leagues, anywhere this week, I will just throw this out there. If Higgins doesn't play, the Bengals are going to play the Commanders this week. And so, if he could pull off a big downfield play like he did last week, maybe he can do it again. Now with A.J. Brown suddenly hurt as well, a lot of people just assumed, all right, this is why they went out and got Jahan Dotson. He's going to be a factor. But it wasn't him. He only had 1 target, 1 catch for 6 yards. Johnny Wilson, the rookie that they took later on, 1 target, no catches. But suddenly there's a receiver who was involved in the passing game, and it's not somebody you probably were aware of, because I wasn't either. His name is Britton Covey. Britton Covey is a 3rd-year wideout who is 27 and a half years old, out of Utah. He's been kind of hanging around the Eagles roster for the last couple of years, not doing anything, partly because of injuries, partly because just hadn't cracked the lineup. And now he has. And last week, after Devontae Smith, he was the 2nd leading target for Jalen Hurts. He actually got 6 targets, again, 2nd on the Eagles. So the good news for him is that he caught all 6, but it only went for 23 yards. Look, this is not going to be a big play threat, kind of the anti-Jermaine Burton, this guy who's going to catch those short slants, those outs, those dinks and dunks. He's got some speed, but at the same time, we'll see if his usage is any more than it was last week. A.J. Brown probably going to be out a couple of weeks at least. Let's hope that it doesn't keep him out too much longer. But man, Dotson just doesn't look ready to integrate into this offense. Kellen Moore is going to do something to try to diversify, this receiving core, because again, those other guys I mentioned really aren't ready to make an impact. Covey at least has that familiarity with Jalen Hurts, or should I say Hurts is familiar with him. Maybe he just trusts him more than a guy like Johnny Wilson or Jahan Dotson, who he barely knows. Look, maybe the upside here for a guy like Covey is like a Cole Beasley, one of those little slot receiver types who catches more passes than you expect and randomly has big weeks out of nowhere. If you're in a standard or half PPR league, I probably wouldn't even think about it, but in full PPR league, just through sheer volume, could be surprisingly useful. And injuries are also letting some tight ends finally get their shot. So you probably know Evan Engram was a last-minute surprise scratch last week. Hamstrings can be tricky. We're not exactly sure what his week 3 status is. Wouldn't be surprised if he misses again. And then who knows, it could linger on. We'll just have to see how that goes. So this gave a chance to a guy who was actually a high draft pick last year. Remember last year's vaunted tight end class? Brenton Strange was actually part of it. That's right, if you recall last year's NFL draft, in order they were taken, Dalton Kincaid was the only first rounder. Then you had Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, Luke Schoonmaker, and then Brenton Strange. He was taken in the second round, actually toward the end of it, and then wound up in his rookie season catching all of 5 passes for a total of 35 yards. Meanwhile, Evan Engram, the starter there, I guess saw that as motivation, wound up with 114 receptions, 4th in the entire NFL. Strange thing happened in week 2 with Engram out. Brenton Strange didn't just kind of hold down his place and block, and he was targeted like Evan Engram. He actually saw 6 targets and he caught 3 of them for 65 yards. Meanwhile, Christian Kirk is still doing absolutely nothing. You would have thought Kirk would have benefited from Ingram's absence, but it was the tight end Strange. I don't know exactly what Doug Peterson's fascination is with tight ends and forcing them to catch passes. It looks like it's just going to continue to be a thing. And we'll say this, Strange does follow a tradition of Penn State tight ends. This is sort of a tight end if you will. I mean, you have guys who are in the league right now. Theo Johnson was just drafted in this year's class. Could be something eventually. Pat Freiermuth, of course. And Mike Gesicki. Talk about a combine warrior. Hey, maybe now that he's in Cincinnati, this will finally be his breakout season. Who knows? So while there are some trust issues with this Jags offense right now, I will say as long as Engram is out, Strange looks like he is a streaming option for the time being, and maybe even gets in the mix if he impresses like he did last week. And then let's circle back to running back one more time, talk about a guy who's just called up from the practice squad. Nope, it's not Keontae Ingram of the Chiefs. I think we've seen enough of him to know he's just not good, and I'm not going to get sucked into this whole Chiefs thing. You may have forgotten about a guy named Chris Brooks, because once upon a time last year, he was on the Dolphins, and he would have made the cut, except they just had too many good running backs. So now he finds himself with the Packers, and with Marshawn Lloyd, promising rookie, just not able to stay healthy. He is on IR, so Brooks has been activated from the practice squad. He's now the 3rd running back in line for the Packers. Sure, Josh Jacobs will definitely be by far a bell cow as long as he's healthy and good, but we know Jacobs has been banged up a lot the last couple years, and at some point maybe, it just takes its toll on him. You always want to have a running back waiting in case your guy, if you have Jacobs, does go down. Now, Emmanuel Wilson is next in line. He's looked good in flashes. He's the guy to get. I know, I get that. He is the handcuff here for Jacobs. But then there's Chris Brooks, who might play a role, because I've been saying all along, which is why I was big on Lloyd in the preseason, is the Packers tend to usually like to go with at least some sort of a timeshare committee, at least have 2 running backs involved. Like A.J. Dillon's gone, Marshawn Lloyd is gone. Emmanuel Wilson is probably going to be getting into the mix at some point, but again, if one or both of these guys are banged up, we could see Chris Brooks in a very prominent role, and the Packers have been running the ball a lot. I understand Jordan Love is hurt. That's part of the reason, but we can't just ignore the fact that Green Bay right now is 5th in rushing attempts and 1st in rushing yards. At least they're able to run the ball effectively, even when the other team knows it's coming. And this actually came as a shock to me. I noticed this. Brooks, again, more of a big back, 6'1", 235, got decent speed, but based on his size and speed score, he actually posted the #1 overall athleticism score among all running backs in 2023. So again, you got a guy who's got the juice. He's in a good system, gonna run the ball, major upside if the worst should happen. And if we've learned anything so far in this 2024 fantasy football season, it's that the worst will probably happen. Stash these guys now while you can, before it becomes too late and you lose out on that waiver bid. You don't want to overpay for these players when you could have got them a week earlier. You're still not sure who to start or sit. You want to get some trade ideas. Well, we have all of that in this week's playlist. Check it out right here.